Paul Hogan sat down for an interview in 2014, and what he said about his divorce from Linda Kozlowski left everyone stunned. The man who made the world laugh as Crocodile Dundee reportedly described the split as one of the most painful experiences of his life. But the real shock wasn't just that the marriage ended. It was what allegedly happened behind closed doors during those final years. The financial battles, the custody concerns, the accusations that flew back and forth. And according to sources close to the couple, there were secrets that neither of them wanted the public to know. What really destroyed this Hollywood love story? If you love diving into the untold stories behind Hollywood's biggest names, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and stick around, because we're uncovering the truth about one of the most heartbreaking splits in celebrity history. Before we get into the divorce, we need to understand how Paul Hogan and Linda Kozlowski became one of Hollywood's most unexpected couples. Paul wasn't your typical leading man. Born in Sydney in 1939, he worked as a rigger on the Sydney Harbour Bridge before stumbling into comedy. By the early 1980s, he'd become a household name in Australia with his television show. But America had no idea who he was. That all changed in 1986 when Crocodile Dundee hit theaters. The movie was a phenomenon. Made on a budget of less than $10 million, it earned over $300 million worldwide. Paul Hogan became an international star practically overnight. And right there beside him, playing the New York journalist Sue Charlton, was Linda Kozlowski. She was a classically trained actress from Connecticut who'd studied at the prestigious Juilliard School. Before Crocodile Dundee, she'd been struggling to make in Hollywood, taking small roles and waiting for her big break. The chemistry between Paul and Linda on screen was undeniable. Audiences loved watching the rugged Australian charmer win over the sophisticated city woman. But what most people didn't know at the time was that the chemistry wasn't just acting. According to reports from the set, Paul and Linda had started a relationship during filming. There was just one problem. Paul was still married to his first wife, Nolene Edwards. Paul and Nolene had been married since 1958. They had 5 children together. Their relationship had already been rocky for years. They divorced once in 1981, remarried in 1982, then separated again. Now, with Paul's career exploding and rumors swirling about his connection to Linda, the marriage was finally over for good. Paul and Nolene's second divorce was finalized in 1989, and Paul married Linda in 1990 in a ceremony that reportedly took place near his ranch in California. For a while, everything seemed perfect. Paul and Linda appeared together in Crocodile Dundee 2 in 1988, and then in the third installment, Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles, which came out in 2001. They had a son together, Chance, born in 1998. From the outside, they looked like the Hollywood dream, a successful actor and his beautiful wife, raising their son away from the chaos of Los Angeles. But according to those who knew them, the reality was more complicated. Insiders claim that the problems between Paul and Linda started much earlier than anyone realized. By the mid-2000s, sources say the couple was living increasingly separate lives. Paul spent much of his time in Australia, where he had business interests and remained deeply connected to his home country. Linda, on the other hand, was reportedly focused on raising Chance in California and pursuing her own projects. One source who worked with the couple during this period told the press that Paul seemed restless. He'd achieved everything he wanted professionally, but allegedly felt disconnected from Hollywood. Linda, meanwhile, was trying to revive her acting career, which had stalled after the Crocodile Dundee films. According to reports, she felt frustrated that she'd become known only as Mrs. Crocodile Dundee, rather than as an actress in her own right. The financial situation was also complicated. Paul had made a fortune from the Crocodile Dundee franchise, but starting in 2004, he became entangled in a massive tax investigation. The Australian Taxation Office launched what they called Operation Wickenby, investigating whether Paul and his business partners had avoided taxes on profits from the Crocodile Dundee films back in the 1980s. The case would drag on for over a decade, and the stress reportedly took a serious toll on his personal life. In 2010, when Paul returned to Australia for his mother's funeral, authorities placed him under a departure prohibition order. He couldn't leave the country until the tax matter was resolved. The situation was humiliating for a man who'd been Australia's most beloved export. According to sources, this period of legal uncertainty created enormous tension in his marriage to Linda. Friends of Linda claimed she felt increasingly isolated. Paul was dealing with his legal issues and spending more time in Australia. She was in California with their son, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. According to one interview Linda gave years later, she said that being married to someone with Paul's level of fame came with challenges she hadn't anticipated. The constant attention, the expectations, the pressure to always be on. But that's not even the most shocking part. What happened next would shock everyone who thought they knew this couple. In October 2013, Linda Kozlowski filed for divorce from Paul Hogan. The announcement caught almost everyone off guard. The couple had been together for more than 2 decades. They'd weathered scandals, financial troubles, and the ups and downs of Hollywood. And now, suddenly, it was over. The initial statement was brief and diplomatic. Representatives said that Paul and Linda had separated and that the divorce was amicable. They asked for privacy during this difficult time. Both parties reportedly agreed there would be no spousal support and no child support payments. But as is often the case with celebrity divorces, the reality behind the statement was reportedly more complex than the public relations spin suggested. According to sources close to the divorce proceedings, there were disputes over how to divide their assets. Paul owned multiple homes, including properties in Australia and the United States. Court documents from the divorce, which were later obtained by various media outlets, revealed some of financial details. Linda was reportedly seeking a substantial portion of their shared wealth. One particularly contentious issue, sources claim, involved the Crocodile Dundee franchise itself. Linda had starred in all 3 films, but Paul owned the rights to the character and controlled much of the intellectual property. There were allegedly discussions about whether Linda was entitled to any ongoing royalties or payments from the films. In the end, Paul retained full control of the Crocodile Dundee rights. The settlement that was eventually reached included several key terms. According to reports, Linda received approximately $6.25 million in the divorce settlement. She also kept the couple's Venice Beach home, where she could continue living until she remarried or until the property was sold. Paul, meanwhile, retained his Australian properties and his business interests. Behind the legal maneuvering, there were also deeply personal issues. Paul, who was in his mid-70s at the time of the divorce, reportedly felt hurt by how things had unfolded. In interviews he gave after the split, he made comments that suggested the end of the marriage had taken him by surprise. He told one Australian publication that divorce was horrible and that he'd never expected to go through it again at his age. Linda, for her part, remained mostly silent in the immediate aftermath. But friends who spoke to the press on her behalf painted a picture of a woman who'd spent years supporting her husband's career while sacrificing her own ambitions. They claimed she'd finally reached a breaking point and needed to move forward with her own life. After the divorce was finalized in 2014, Paul Hogan started opening up about what he was going through, and what he said reportedly shocked even those who knew him well. This was a man who'd built his career on being the easygoing, wisecracking Australian bloke. Now, he was talking about loneliness, regret, and pain. In a 2014 interview with an Australian magazine, Paul admitted that the divorce had been devastating. According to reports, he felt that the financial settlement had been difficult, though he avoided going into specific details publicly. Paul allegedly told friends that the split had cost him dearly, both emotionally and financially. But the financial hit wasn't what hurt the most, Paul claimed. It was the loss of his family unit. He spoke openly about missing his son, Chance, who was living primarily with Linda in California. Paul was spending most of his time in Australia, thousands of miles away. Sources say he felt isolated and struggled with the adjustment to living alone again in his late 70s. One particularly painful moment came when Paul gave an interview to an Australian television program in 2016. He was asked about Linda and the divorce, and his response was raw. He reportedly said that he hadn't seen the split coming, and that it had taken him a long time to process what had happened. The interviewer later said that Paul seemed genuinely heartbroken, not the confident, joking persona everyone expected. Friends of Paul told the press that he'd become more withdrawn. He was living modestly, far from the glamorous lifestyle he'd once enjoyed. He was also reportedly dealing with health issues, including kidney problems that would require surgery in 2016. The combination of physical ailments and emotional turmoil allegedly left him struggling. According to one longtime friend who spoke to a tabloid, Paul felt that his life had changed dramatically in ways he never expected. The man who'd once been one of the biggest stars in the world was now dealing with the aftermath of divorce, health concerns, and the reality of aging alone. If you're finding this story as fascinating as we are, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and drop a comment below. Did you ever think Paul and Linda would split? Let us know your thoughts. While Paul was publicly grappling with the aftermath of the divorce, Linda Kozlowski was reportedly moving forward with her life in a very different way. And what she did next allegedly surprised everyone who knew her. Not long after the divorce was finalized, Linda was photographed with a man named Malay Hafid Baba. He was a Moroccan tour guide she'd reportedly met while traveling in Morocco. According to reports, Linda had taken a trip to Morocco looking for a fresh start and some time to reflect on her life. That's where she met Malay. The two apparently connected immediately. Malay was younger than Linda and ran a tour company in Morocco. Friends later said that Linda was drawn to his down-to-earth nature and passion for his work. It was a stark contrast to the Hollywood world she'd been living in for so long. By 2015, Linda and Malay had reportedly become serious. There were even reports that they'd gotten engaged, though neither of them confirmed this publicly. Linda began spending significant time in Morocco with Malay, though she maintained her home in Venice Beach and her ties to California, where her son was living. For Paul, the news that Linda had moved on reportedly stung. Friends claim he was surprised by how quickly Linda had found a new relationship. Some reports even suggested that Paul wondered whether Linda had been ready to move on long before they officially separated. Linda, however, seemed genuinely happy with her new life. In the few interviews she gave, she spoke positively about exploring Moroccan culture and having the freedom to travel and experience new things. She talked about learning new languages and embracing a different pace of life. She didn't say much about Paul or the divorce, preferring to focus on her future rather than her past. The contrast between Paul's visible struggle and Linda's fresh start became a topic of discussion in celebrity media. Some outlets portrayed it as a classic story of one partner moving on while the other remained stuck. Others saw it as Linda finally prioritizing her own happiness after years of being defined by her famous husband's career. While the romantic drama grabbed headlines, there were two other complicated layers to this divorce that added to the pain: the situation with their son Chance and Paul's ongoing legal troubles. Chance was 15 when his parents separated, old enough to understand what was happening, but still at an age where parental stability mattered enormously. Sources close to the family said the divorce affected him, though both Paul and Linda reportedly worked to shield him from the worst of the public attention. According to the divorce settlement, there was no formal child support arrangement, which was unusual. Linda had primary physical custody of Chance, and he continued living with her in the Venice Beach home. Paul, spending most of his time in Australia, had to navigate being a long-distance father during Chance's crucial teenage years. Friends of Paul said this was one of the aspects of the divorce that bothered him most. He wanted to be more present in his son's life, but the geographical distance made it challenging. There were reportedly some disagreements between Paul and Linda about how to handle Chance's upbringing, though both parents seemed committed to putting their son's well-being first. On top of the personal struggles, Paul's tax case with the Australian Taxation Office continued to hang over him. The investigation that had begun in 2004 finally reached a resolution in 2016. More than a decade later, Paul reached a confidential settlement with the ATO without any admission of wrongdoing. The case had never resulted in criminal charges being proven, but the years of legal battles, uncertainty, and financial stress had clearly taken their toll. The timing was particularly difficult. Paul was dealing with his divorce, his health issues, his strained relationship with his teenage son, and this massive legal matter all at the same time. Friends said it was one of the darkest periods of his life. Before we wrap up, take a second to like this video if you're enjoying it. And let us know in the comments, do you think long-distance relationships can work after divorce, especially when kids are involved? So where do things stand today between Paul Hogan and Linda Kozlowski? They've both moved forward with their lives, though in very different directions. Paul, now in his mid-80s, has continued to live a relatively quiet life. He splits his time between Australia and California, and he's been open about his health struggles in recent years. The kidney surgery he underwent in 2016 was reportedly serious, and friends say it made him reflect on his mortality and what matters most to him. He's worked to maintain his relationship with Chance, who is now in his mid-20s. Sources say father and son have a good relationship today, though they don't see each other as frequently as Paul would prefer. In interviews over the past few years, Paul has been more philosophical about the divorce. He said that he doesn't regret his time with Linda and that they shared many good years together. But he's also been honest about how difficult the split was for him. In a 2019 interview, he reportedly said that divorce at his age was particularly hard and that starting over in your 70s isn't something he'd recommend. Linda, meanwhile, continued her relationship with Malay Hafid Baba for several years. She split her time between Morocco and California, maintaining her Venice Beach property while exploring life abroad. Reports suggest she eventually spent less time in Morocco, but has kept a very low profile in recent years. She's largely stepped away from acting and public life, focusing instead on her personal relationships and her role as Chance's mother. Friends say Linda seems content with the choices she's made. She's reportedly proud of how Chance has turned out and feels that leaving the marriage, when she did, was the right decision for her. She's maintained her privacy and rarely speaks publicly about her past with Paul or her years in Hollywood. Chance, now in his mid-20s, has successfully stayed out of the spotlight. He's said to be close with both of his parents and has handled the complicated family dynamics with maturity. Sources say he has his own life and interests, and he's chosen not to pursue a career in entertainment. Both Paul and Linda reportedly respect his desire for privacy. As for whether Paul and Linda maintain any relationship today, reports are mixed. Some sources claim they've had minimal contact since the divorce was finalized, communicating only when necessary about matters related to Chance. Others suggest they've reached a cordial place where they can acknowledge their shared history without bitterness. What's clear is that they've both chosen to move forward rather than dwell on the past. The tax case that caused Paul so much stress was finally fully resolved in 2016 with a settlement that allowed him to move freely again. The departure prohibition order was lifted, and Paul could once again travel without restriction. The resolution, while not providing vindication, at least gave him closure on that painful chapter. What's certain is that the divorce between Paul Hogan and Linda Kozlowski was more complicated than their public statement suggested. While they described it as amicable, the reality involved financial negotiations, difficult decisions about their son, and emotional pain on both sides. It was the end of a Hollywood love story that had once seemed perfect. Paul Hogan and Linda Kozlowski's story is a reminder that even the most glamorous Hollywood romances can fall apart, and that divorce at any age brings its own unique challenges. What started as chemistry on the set of Crocodile Dundee became a 23-year marriage, and eventually ended with both people trying to find happiness in different ways. So here's our question for you. What's your favorite Paul Hogan or Linda Kozlowski moment from the Crocodile Dundee films? Do you remember where you were when you first saw that movie? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of Hollywood's most talked about divorces, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got plenty more untold stories coming your way. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.